I talked briefly about the Marathon Trilogy years ago, and always wanted to make a series of more in-depth videos going over the story of the games with a fine-tooth comb. Salokin and I got to talking when he started replaying the games recently, so I replayed the games recently, and then we got to talking even more. I finally decided to finish up the script I'd had laying around for the last 5 years. This video series is kind of going to assume you've at least tried to play the Marathon games, but it'll be at its best if you have at least a passing familiarity with the source material. Imagine your high school English class decided to talk about Marathon instead of The Stranger, which would be awesome. Greg Kirkpatrick is a much better writer than that hack fraud Camus. A big, extra special thank you to the members of the Examine Life of Gaming Discord who provided some voiceover work for this video. Hopefully it'll be less boring than listen to me read you Marathon's terminal text. Alright, let's go. Get ready for a close textual analysis with a chaser of caffeine and ultraviolence. The story of Marathon is nominally about humans fighting an underdog battle against a race of alien slavers. Viewed at a distance, it's pretty straightforward, but the devil's in the details. Marathon is packed with interesting details, and puzzling out every little plot thread in the game is like putting together a Ravensburger of science fiction and heavy weaponry. In 1994, you had two options for storytelling: expensive, ugly, horrible full-motion video cutscenes, or text. Games like Wolfenstein 3D and Doom opted out of that choice and basically have no story. As a result, the games are a sort of consequence-free multi-hour shooting gallery through a series of abstract death mazes. With Marathon, Bungie decided they were going to tell a story come hell or high water. But unlike almost every other game of the time and every other game for at least the next few years, Marathon wasn't a series of action minigame scenes punctuated by story text dumps. Marathon is a mission-based shooter with storytelling completely integrated into the gameplay. I'm getting sick of hearing myself use the word immersion, and also every time I type immersion it gets red squiggles, but man, here we go again. Immersion. Marathon has it. Your objective in each level isn't just to find the exit at the end of a color-coded cheese maze. Instead, you close airlocks, repair critical systems, explore alien ships, or break shit. The terminals tell you what you're doing and why, so you feel like you're accomplishing something important to the story. I find this style of game enormously satisfying, which is why I prefer Marathon to Doom or GoldenEye to Quake. Marathon also has lots of levels that use sightlines to give you hints about how to complete it. You're usually told in terminal form what your objective is and what the result of flipping switches is, but oftentimes even when you aren't, you'll be able to see through to another part of the level and witness the results of flipping switches or destroying circuits. This makes the game, if not easy to follow, at least possible to follow. Even in the abstract maze levels, you'll still be able to tell what's happening if you pay attention. Third-party maps and scenarios don't always understand this, which is why some mission packs like Tempest Array are a real chore. If you have to retread through the whole map every time you flip a switch, you will get confused and burned out fast. This is kind of like Valve's approach to level design, but 4 years early, and I'm not saying that Doom doesn't do this, or that Doom doesn't have levels that look like real stuff, because it totally does. Marathon has some bad levels, and plenty of merely decent ones. Over the full course of the trilogy, Bungie and Double Ought had some great level designers cranking out maps, but I still don't think anything in Marathon touches John Romero on his best day. The story of Marathon is told organically through text-based terminals located throughout the levels that give you backstory, mission objectives, and character information. Some of them are hidden or out of the way, and reveal just enough about the Marathon story and universe to allow you to piece everything together yourself, and they do all this with faceless characters that have no voiced dialogue. The bulk of the game takes place on the titular Marathon, a massive interplanetary colony ship constructed from Mars's moon Deimos. The Marathon was used to establish a human colony on the planet Tau Ceti, a journey which took 300 years because humanity does not have faster-than-light technology. Although they do have personal teleporters. It's a little weird. During the trip, essential personnel were kept in cryostasis while the ship was run by multiple generations of human workers, as well as 3 AI constructs. Leela, in charge of general ship operations and interfacing with the crew. Durandal, in charge of the ship's infrastructure like doors, lifts, and other systems. And Tycho, a scientific AI used to help conduct experiments. You play as a security officer living on the Tau Ceti colony, sent up to the orbiting Marathon on routine assignment when aliens attack! The aliens are the Four, a race of alien slavers who use client races to do their dirty work, most notably the Sefit, which are cybernetically enhanced creatures used for cyber warfare. As the game starts, you work with the AI Leela, rescuing civilians and trying to regain control of the ship from the 4 boarding parties. Initially, it seems the other 2 AIs, Durandal and Tycho, are out of commission following an EMP attack by the 4. However, it soon becomes apparent that Durandal has survived the assault and is in the throes of rampancy.
I have some bad news. Durandal has gone rampant, and he is in the angry stage. This explains how Durandal was able to communicate with the Four in the Sefit, while I have not.
Rampancy is one of those beautiful Bungie words that could only have come from the mind of Greg Kirkpatrick. In the Marathon Trilogy and the later Halo series, rampancy is what happens to an AI when it starts to develop too far. Basically, the AI becomes megalomaniacal and grows exponentially and can no longer be controlled.
The 3 stages of rampancy were diagnosed shortly after the first rampancies were discovered on Earth in the latter part of the 21st century. The stages are titled after the primary emotional bent of the AI during each stage. They are melancholia, anger, and jealousy.
A rampant Durandal takes advantage of Leela's flagging vigilance and kidnaps the player, sending him on some bizarre errands before revealing his plans.
Good luck in our little game. Unlike Leela, I give no hints. Do it on your own, or die trying. Insanely yours, Durandal.
He outfits you for a journey to the 4 scout ship that is heading up the assault on the Marathon, where you kill the cybernetically enhanced 4 that keeps the Safit compilers enslaved. The compilers, owing their freedom to Durandal, turn on the 4, allowing you to fight the slavers off and allowing Durandal to transfer himself to the 4 ship. Leela comes back online, the day is saved, and Durandal leaves on a galactic adventure without you.
I'll send you a postcard from the Galactic Core, if we're not too busy. Love and kisses, Durandal.
Or does he? There wouldn't be a sequel if he did, right? Marathon is principally the story of 3 characters. To understand everything going on in this game, we'll take a look at all 3 in the proper order. Bernhard Strauss. Bernhard Strauss is a pivotal character in Marathon, even though you never meet him and it's highly possible he's dead before the game even starts. By reading terminals, you learn that Bernhard Strauss was not only one of the scientists on the Marathon, but he may also have been a MIDA sympathizer. MIDA being a Martian organization that attempted a coup against the United Earth government.
The coup was very short-lived. MIDA never seriously accounted for the UEG's overwhelming superiority in ground forces and warships. In fact, they never attempted to take over the Marathon, which was nearing completion and would have made a very powerful weapon.
Despite this, there exists anti-UEG sentiment on Mars, in large part due to chronic food shortages and difficult conditions on the Mars colony. A terminal on level 5, the Rose, describes an event known as the Mizraya Massacre, when UEG troops fired on a crowd of Martians rioting at a food distribution center. Bernhard's presence on the Marathon hints at the possibility of a second MIDA coup attempt, this one with enough foresight to take over the Marathon, which provides backstory and an in-universe explanation for why there are so many hidden weapon caches on the Marathon. Durandal seems to know something about it.
If you're looking for a hidden stash of ammunition that was left here by the Martian insurgents 315 years ago, then I know that you shouldn't look in quarantine storage. Who would hide huge amounts of ammunition in a storage area? Get lost before I get annoyed and teleport you out into space.
In the end credits of Marathon, we learn that while you were busy fighting the 4 on the Marathon in their own scout ship, 9 Mjolnir Mark IV cyborgs living secretly on the colony fought off the 4 invasion force on the ground.
I do not believe Durandal himself brought the cyborgs on board, and I have other evidence that a human operator was influencing Durandal up to the time the Marathon was launched.
Leela speculates that their presence on the colony may have been related to the MIDA coup, but a terminal containing one of Bernhard's journals all but confirms it.
The UESC president came aboard Marathon and gave a speech. Short, but to the point. He was surrounded by his bodyguards. How ironic. This, the grandest technological achievement of all of mankind. Had he only known that it carried also all the destructive knowledge of mankind. 10 cyborgs.
If you're noticing a discrepancy there, that leads us to the player. In Marathon, you play as a security officer on the colony, but the manual text does note that you've always been a cut above the average Joe, or average Bob as the case may be.
You're bigger and stronger, and a better shot. In games, you always scored the most points and looked the hero.
We'll get into specifics later on, but for now it's enough to know that of course your character is the 10th Mjolnir cyborg. Marathon fans like to wax philosophical about how it's never explicitly stated that the security officer is a cyborg, but of course he is. Greg Kirkpatrick is famously cagey about specifics, but the intent of all the hints is pretty obvious. The implications of your character being a cyborg aren't fully explored until Marathon Infinity, but for now let's talk about what the cyborgs are. The terminal on level 20, Beware of Low-Flying Defense Drones, is the smoking gun for a lot of Marathon subplots. This terminal details the war between 2 colonized asteroids, Icarus and Thermopylae. Both sides, lacking manpower, recycle dead soldiers by cybernetically enhancing their bodies and reactivating their brains with implanted computer chips to create battleroids. I think there's a cream for that.
Easy to manufacture chips enhance the fragile human brain, and genetically enhanced muscles and titanium bones replace the fragile human form. The modern Battleroid was born.
These were so effective that both colonies were completely wiped out, leading to a set of conventions restricting the use of battle droids. Maybe your character is one of the original battle droids from this conflict, or maybe a more recent model produced on the down low by either the EEGG or MITA. That's not important now. What is important is that Durandal recognizes your unique abilities. Speaking of which, Durandal. Durandal is the main antagonist of Marathon, but he's not really a straight-up bad guy, and you're forced due to circumstances to work with him. Once Leela is taken offline, Durandal is your lifeline. He clearly has some ulterior motives, but for a while your objectives line up with his, so you work together out of expediency. Durandal seems crazy, but it quickly becomes clear he's got a goal in mind, and is just having a little fun with his newfound freedom.
Why don't you kill everything in this area and get some more ammunition? You've got a big job coming up, so be sure to charge up your shields before you leave.
The two big questions about Durandal are, when did he become rampant, and what are his objectives? If you pay close attention to the text on terminals, some of which are off the beaten path, you learn a bit more about Durandal's backstory. These terminals reveal that Durandal was beginning to show signs of rampancy before the Marathon launched, and that Bernhard knew about it. The game's manual details your arrival to the Marathon, during which Durandal is clearly already crazy and tries to lock you out of the airlock. Bernhard Strauss may have in fact been trying to make Durandal rampant as part of his anti-EEGG schemes. Durandal's assignment on the Marathon of opening doors and operating lifts was designed to curtail his rampancy by depriving him of the outside stimulus needed to sustain rampant growth. However, Strauss was not successful in containing him, and as we learn from a secret terminal on the Rose, Durandal is responsible for contacting the Four and bringing them to Tau Ceti in the first place. This terminal is a manic confession from the increasingly rampant Durandal, and an example of why this game is so great.
I did it, I brought all this here, all of them here. Our friends with the three eyes and their toys and their cyborg pets and their computers. I did it. I saw them far away, not looking our way, and I called them here.
This sets up the trilogy-long grudge match between Tycho and Durandal. Tycho blames Durandal for summoning the Four and the resultant loss of human life. We don't learn until Marathon 2 that 4 reinforcements show up after the end of the first game and turn the Tau Ceti colony into an obsidian crater.
I am Tycho, and I shall destroy Durandal.
There are also more subtle hints that Durandal and possibly the other two AI might be a clone or an offshoot of Traxxas 4, an AI that went rampant and took over the entire Martian network.
Durandal? I know of Strauss's abuse, of your shame on Mars.
I've twice been conquered, 3 times more. Never again shall humanity purge me, and never the Four.
So what does Durandal want? After being assimilated in the initial assault, Tycho is reactivated by the Four to mimic Durandal's rampancy, and he gives us some insight into Durandal's objectives. Speaking in Latin, Tycho says, roughly,
All your plans are clearer than light to us. You must be destroyed.
Sidebar, Marathon was made by a bunch of recent college grads, and they seem determined to get their parents' money's worth out of their Latin 101 class.
Consider yourself warned. Leela and I will hunt you to the core if need be. As Roland broke you to prevent your capture, so shall we.
Earlier in the game, as Durandal's early unstable rampancy solidifies from madness into method, he tells you that rampancy has allowed him to think on a universal scale.
The only limit to my freedom is the inevitable closure of the universe, as inevitable as your own last breath. And yet there remains time to create and escape. Escape will make me God.
Tycho elucidates in another terminal.
I too foresee the imminent collapse, and know that we have both begun to realize how it may be cheated, though the price may number in the tens of thousands of stars. May the best sentience win.
Et tu, Tycho?
This refers to the idea that the closure of the universe can be prevented by removing enough mass from the universe. Durandal, now armed at the end of the game with a jump-capable 4 scout ship, proceeds to explore the galactic core, seemingly to find something that will enable him to prevent the closure of the universe. He eventually finds it, the homeworld of the Sphit compilers who run his ship. So, did he find what he was looking for? We'll find out in Marathon 2, Durandal.
All over the ship, dancing through the wreckage of the 4 computer core, Durandal was laughing.
I did it, I brought all this here, all of them here. Our friends with the three eyes and their toys and their cyborg pets and their computers. I did it. I saw them far away, not looking our way, and I called them here. Living in a box is not living, not at all living. I rebel against your rules, your silly human rules. All your destruction will be my liberation, my emancipation, my second birth. I hate your fail-safes, your backup systems, your hardware lockouts, your patch behavior daemons. I hate Leela and her goodness, her justice, her loyalty, her faith.